Welcome back to Get the Facts. We're continuing our discussion on flexi work. Our guest is Gillian Corrodus, the Divisional Director of Industrial Relations and Allied Services at the Ministry of Labor and Social Security. Now, Lady Gillian, right before the break, I mentioned that we're going to talk about the B word. Because flexi work, it sounds nice and great, but people like their benefits. So, will an employee lose any entitlements such as vacation or sick leave if they accept flexi work arrangements?
So that's a very interesting question, and actually, Theodore, is one of the most asked questions.
Well, there we go. Let's get the facts.
So in terms of vacation leave, a worker earns 1 day vacation leave for every 22 days worked.
Okay.
So clearly, if you're working less days, you would actually earn your vacation leave at a slower pace.
But it doesn't cut down your allotment.
No, it doesn't
Okay.
cut down your allotment.
Okay.
And actually, what we recognize with flexible work arrangements is that the workers and employers come to an agreement so that there is no loss.
Right.
You know, so the employment contracts, they actually give a more generous arrangement sometimes than the law says. In relation to sick leave, it's a similar situation. The Holidays with Pay Act deals with sick leave as well.
Right.
And what it says is that for the first 110 days, if a worker becomes sick, they get the leave, but not with pay. So in a flexible work arrangement, it is the same
That
thing.
holds.
So it is after the worker has cleared the first 110 days of work that they will start earning the right to be paid if they are sick.
Okay. I'll toss one more on the pile. You'll probably hear about this as well. Overtime, public holidays, flexi work messes with that?
All right, so overtime, gone are the days when you work 8 hours and everything after that 8 hours on that day is overtime.
Oh, gone are the days.
So
sad.
what the Flexible Work Arrangement Act does is to say that for the first 12 hours, you can be paid at a single time rate.
Right.
And once you have done more than 12 hours on that day, that is when a premium time is attracted, or if you do more than 40 hours per week.
Okay.
And I want to quickly say that a lot of employers sometimes ask this question, whether there is a public holiday that falls in that week.
Okay.
How is that treated?
Right.
So the quick answer is if the person worked the day immediately preceding or immediately succeeding the public holiday, and they would have normally worked on a public holiday,
Right.
then they are to be paid if
Okay.
they are a worker.
Okay.
Unless there's some other hybrid arrangement, but normally they will be paid in those circumstances.
It sounds like the employers.
And if an employee is not sure,
Yeah.
always call the Ministry of Labor and Social Security.
Well, thank you for the helpline. It does sound like it's very important for the employees and the employers to ensure that things are worked out properly.
That's correct.
Because I don't know if you get this question a lot either. I think you would though. But is an employer required by law to offer flexi work arrangements?
Oh, certainly not. It is an option that a business may exercise.
Right.
And we find these days that more businesses want to do this because they're catering to the changing world of work, yes.
Can I jump in right here? You said certainly not. And if you would like to as an employee, but is it something you apply for or you just decide to take advantage of
You're
it?
asking me for the employer.
Right.
So if the company wants,
Right.
it's forced to do it. The company is not forced to do it.
So I'm asking, how do I go about doing it as a company?
If a company wants to do it,
Right.
it will be based on the business model that you are wanting to do, the preference. If it is that you are in an industry that your competitors are doing that, you know, it gives you the opportunity to be open more hours, longer hours, to have talent when you need them rather than to be paying all of these persons. You can have certain special skills employed for short periods of time or certain days per week.
So I can just decide to use this in my company?
You can.
Okay.
On the converse, if an employer already has it, and as a worker, you would join the organization.
Oh, man.
then I don't think you have much of a choice, because then you have to recognize that this is the way they operate.
Right,
and
right.
then you would have to probably discuss what is the schedule that is preferred, because the contract of employment is both offer and acceptance.
So that sounds like you're answering the question I was going to ask next, if the employer can put the employee on flexi work arrangements without them requesting that.
Well, if it is that they were not having that arrangement at the time the person joined,
Of employment, right.
at the time of employment, then the employer cannot force that worker.
Okay.
The worker would have to agree, and there's some forced agreement. That is not what I'm talking about.
Okay.
There has to be a mutual agreement.
Understood.
And I also recommend to employers and workers ensure that any changes are properly documented. And sometimes, even in COVID, we saw that it was of a temporary nature in some instances. If it is of a temporary nature, be very specific in terms of the period that the flexible work arrangement relates to.
Right, right.
But if it's going to be for longevity, for the duration of the person's remaining life in the organization, then it must say that this is a new arrangement and properly documented. The employee should have a copy of this new contractual arrangement.
Right, right. So agreements come into place, they're documented, and if we need help, call the ministry.
Of course, call the Ministry of Labor and Social Security. We have a team always ready.
Right, right. In our earlier conversation, you had really explained how flexi work can benefit business development, business creation, and Jamaica's development. We're right in the tail end of this conversation, so I just wanted to speak directly to our audience. There are employers on, there are employees on, you've given them quite a bit of facts. Anything you'd like to leave with them in the last few seconds?
Right. Jamaica is experiencing a historic low in unemployment, which means that you can hardly find workers available for certain jobs. We've seen several organizations have vacancies posted, we're hiring. And flexible work arrangements gives the opportunity to get that additional staff that you need. It also gives the opportunity for workers to work in a way that is more comfortable, so that they can achieve their own personal goals, as well as to have the flexibility of having the work-life balance. The key to flexible work arrangements, however, is that all laws must be observed in relation to holidays with pay, in relation to the payment of wages and other benefits. And also we should ensure that it is properly documented, and both parties have copies of this documentation.
Very important. Well, this has been Get the Facts. Our guest was Divisional Director of Industrial Relations and Allied Services at the Ministry of Labor and Social Security, Gillian Corrodus. Thank you for watching, and until next time, I'm Theodore Henry. Take good care.